All right, what's up, guys, and welcome to Diabetes Talk. I'm your host, Charlie O'Connell, and tonight's topic is losing weight with diabetes. This is one of the most common challenges that frustrates everybody living with diabetes. How do I lose weight when I'm struggling with a disease that is characterized by something called insulin resistance, or I'm actually injecting insulin? And in both cases, both insulin resistance and the need to take exogenous insulin, what exogenous insulin means is injectable insulin, can make weight loss very, very challenging. So tonight's topic is going to be recognizing that challenge and then giving you some very common or some very practical tips as to how to have success losing weight with diabetes. So let's start off with the first term that I just mentioned, which is insulin resistance. So what insulin resistance is a common affliction of people living with diabetes. It can happen to people with both type 2 diabetes and type 1 diabetes. And what it means is that your body has become resistant to the effects of insulin. Now, what is insulin? What does insulin do? Well, insulin is a hormone that's produced by your pancreas. And insulin primarily does two things in your body. Insulin causes the storage, it causes the absorption of glucose into your liver, muscle, and fat tissue. Okay? It also simultaneously inhibits fat metabolism. So it's very, very important to understand that. First thing, insulin does two things in your body. And almost everybody living with diabetes understands the relationship between insulin and glucose, right? Insulin causes the absorption of glucose. They don't understand the equally important relationship between insulin and fat metabolism and the fact that insulin inhibits fat metabolism. It stops fat metabolism from happening. That's why we call insulin as like a traffic cop. When insulin becomes present in your blood, it goes, stop fat, come on in glucose. All right? Now, the other important thing to understand about insulin is a anabolic hormone. So what that means is it's a hormone that's used to build up. Okay? It is a hormone that is used to build up cellular structure, to fill cells in with energy. That is what the point of insulin is. Okay? Now, when people become resistant to insulin, a very, very strange and frustrating thing happens. When you become resistant to insulin, you require even more insulin. And the requirement of that more insulin is supplied in one of two ways. It's supplied by your own pancreas. So many people living with type 2 diabetes who have insulin resistance actually have a condition called hyperinsulinemia. And what hyperinsulinemia means is high levels of insulin. Okay? And when you're resistant to insulin, the levels of insulin go even higher and higher. Okay? Because your body it's producing more insulin to address that resistance to the insulin. And ultimately what that does is that inhibits fat metabolism. So this is a very, very frustrating cycle that people living with diabetes go through. The same thing can actually happen for people with type 1 diabetes or people with type 2 diabetes that are insulin dependent. So if you develop insulin resistance and you have type 1 diabetes or a form of type 2 diabetes where you require insulin, all that means is you have to take more and more insulin. And basically, to kind of simplify this very, very important fundamental picture, is the more insulin you have in your body, the harder and harder it is going to be to lose weight. And that's really just the key message here. Okay? So, what do we do with that? How do we address insulin resistance? Well, luckily, there are two very, very effective ways of addressing insulin resistance. And the first one starts with exercise. So, your muscles, your actual muscle tissue, are the primary tissue that insulin is designed to interact with. Okay? And your muscles are designed to store sugar. That is the place in your body where excess glucose from the food that you've eaten is designed to be stored most effectively. Now, the more you exercise, the larger your muscles become, the more ability you are going to have to store sugar, okay? And the more sensitive you are going to become to insulin. Because what exercise does is exercise stimulates the depletion of the sugar out of the muscles. And when you deplete sugar out of the muscles, it actually makes your muscles open up to receive excess sugar stored by excess insulin. Okay? So I really, really want to encourage you to, first off, educate yourself, but there's a reason why aerobic exercise has such a powerful, powerful impact on improving sensitivity to insulin. Aerobic exercise is typically characterized by exercise that requires large muscles in the body, right? So your legs, basically, your legs being the largest muscles in your body, and consistent movement. So something like walking or any of our GlucoseZone lower body workouts, okay, are going to be fantastic ways of engaging, okay, the lower body, utilizing large muscles in an aerobic fashion and increasing your sensitivity to insulin. So that's the first part. That's the first step in this whole journey, okay? The second step now is reducing the presence of insulin, okay, through your food choices. And these things go hand in hand, guys. So healthy fat metabolism, because that's ultimately what we're trying to get at here, is achieved by consuming foods that are high in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, low in carbohydrate, and low in calorie. And what that does is that lowers the presence of insulin and lowers the requirement of insulin in your body. When you lower the presence of insulin, when you lower the requirement of insulin in your body, you do two things. The first thing you do is you stabilize your glucose levels. The second thing that you do is you enable healthy fat metabolism. Okay? And the way that you enable healthy fat metabolism is by lowering the presence of insulin. So how do we do that? Let's talk about some very practical, common, easy to understand food tips. Let's start with breakfast. Because breakfast, we have found, I personally have found, and we have now found working with thousands of people, is that breakfast is actually the easiest meal to make adjustments to. So, what we recommend for breakfast is starting your day off with something that we call green juicing. Now, I want to encourage you to do your own research on this. I want to encourage you to become your own advocate and utilize things like Google, okay? I want you to look up material like live green cuisine, okay? But the point is that basically if you can start your morning off by consuming green juice, and I will define green juice as how I drink it, but really I want to encourage you to look this up yourself, okay? But generally speaking, the definition of green juice is a shake that's about 12 ounces. It's mostly water and either spinach, kale, or some other dark green leafy vegetable mixed with less than 15 grams of carbohydrate worth of fruit. Okay? So what does that mean? So for example, I'll give you an example of the green juice that I had this morning. I took several large handfuls of baby spinach and then a piece of watermelon just about this big. Okay, and one piece of watermelon just about this big is about 15 grams of carbohydrate. I mixed those things together with water and then blended them in a NutriBullet. And what that enabled me to do was consume something for breakfast that had all the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that my body needed with a very, very low carbohydrate fulfillment. And by consuming something with a very, very low carbohydrate content, that enabled me to reduce the presence of insulin. And in my case, it was such a low carbohydrate requirement or content that I actually did not have to cover that food with fast-acting insulin. And in my case, it's actually interesting because I have type 1 diabetes. I actually know on a unit by unit by unit level how much insulin is in my body. So I'll give you an example of what the impact is. I drank green juice this morning. I did not take any units of insulin to cover that green juice. I saw a very slight rise in my glucose levels. My glucose levels topped out right at about 135. I woke up actually with a great number this morning. My number topped out at 135, and then basically my number stayed very, very stable for the whole rest of the morning. When your numbers stay stable for hours at a time, that means that your body is in a healthy fat metabolism state. When your blood sugar is going up and down, up and down, up and down, okay, that means that you are experiencing large swings and large fluctuations in not only your glucose levels, but also your insulin levels. And anytime you're experiencing large fluctuations in your glucose levels and your insulin levels is basically counterproductive to healthy fat metabolism. Now, let's compare that to other types of breakfast. So for example, if I had the typical recommendation, and this is the really, really important key thing, is that many people are misguided with their food recommendations, and they follow the misguided principle that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And yes, that is true in the sense that your breakfast choice is going to really dictate the whole way you go. But it is not, definitely does not mean breakfast should be your largest meal. That's totally not correct and inappropriate for somebody living with diabetes. So don't make that mistake of, having, here's a typical breakfast here in America would be lots of grains. So generally speaking, people living with diabetes need to avoid grains, okay? The other thing that many people have is cereal. And don't make the mistake of thinking that cereal, it doesn't matter what the brand is. Anything that comes in a box and has a shelf life of 2 to 3 years is not going to be a healthy option for you for breakfast, and it is going to cause the requirement of lots of insulin in your body. Okay? So, and again, I'm just talking in generalities. I want to encourage you to start green juicing for breakfast. You will be amazed at the difference that it will make. And I'll share a personal example. So about 7 years ago, okay, I started gaining weight. And before I knew it, I was about 230 pounds. And I was confused by it because my eating habits hadn't changed. I was basically had experienced my full adult metabolism actually kicking in, and I actually stopped growing, which was is an interesting thing to basically understand the dynamic of as a teenager, as an adolescent, as a person in your young 20s, in my case going all the way into my early 30s, I was still actually in a growth period. And it was very interesting. You could see the moment that I actually stopped growing, I started gaining weight. All right? And I had to address my eating habits. So in my case, I had been faithfully eating a bowl of oatmeal with peanut butter, fruit, and honey every single day. Okay? And if we follow conventional format, that was a fantastic, healthy, low glycemic, all of the kind of buzzword terms that basically would define a healthy breakfast, my bowl of oatmeal represented. But that bowl of oatmeal was representing a huge amount of caloric density that was causing two things in my body. It was causing a high requirement of insulin, and it was causing a lot of excess glucose circulating through my body for a long period of time. So what did I do? All I did was, instead of having a bowl of oatmeal in the morning, I switched to a green juice shake. And now here's what happened. Over the course of the next 6 months, I lost 30 pounds, but I retained the same exact amount of muscle mass. And this was what was really interesting about this, was when I was 230 pounds, I had about 170 pounds worth of muscle, lean muscle mass. And the reason why I knew that is because I was a fitness professional in the fitness industry, and I had actually conducted my body metrics. Over the course of the 6 months, I started to lose weight, and I actually got down to 200 pounds. And when I conducted my body metrics again, I had the same exact amount of muscle mass. I still had 170 pounds of muscle mass. I had just melted off 30 pounds of excess fat. And the difference in my life was incredible. I looked better, I felt better, I had more energy, I was stronger, I was faster, okay? All of these positive things came from this simple principle of consuming food that was high in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients in the morning, but very, very low in calories, very, very low carbohydrate, which ultimately enabled me to reduce the presence of insulin in my body. And that ultimately, guys, is what the goal is here. The way that you are going to lose weight living with diabetes is reducing the presence of insulin in your body. Now, up until this point, we have talked about insulin as either secreted by your pancreas naturally or injectable insulin. But there are other things that come into play when it comes to diabetes, and there are specific types of diabetes medications that impact your insulin levels. For example, there's a class of medications called sulfonylureas. Sulfonylureas are oral medications that stimulate your pancreas to secrete more insulin. Okay? And that can lead to weight gain. There are certain medications that actually increase your fat cells and muscle cells' ability to intake glucose, those types of medications can lead to weight gain. All right? And what you need to do is you need to talk with your doctor about the oral medications that you may be taking that have a side effect of weight gain and or are medications that have something called a hypoglycemic issue. Okay? A hypoglycemic side effect, or a medication as a side effect of hypoglycemia, means that there is a risk of low blood sugar associated with that medication. And hypoglycemic risk medications, if you're on them, can make weight loss very, very challenging. Because usually the way that they do that is either by increasing the presence of insulin in your body or increasing your cell's ability to uptake and intake glucose artificially. And in both of those cases, if you're taking those medications, losing weight is going to be very challenging. Okay? So you need to talk with your doctor about that. You need to really, really understand, why am I taking these medications? Am I taking these medications because I have not demonstrated the ability to control my blood sugar? Am I taking these medications because I have not demonstrated the ability to have portion control? Am I taking these medications because I have not demonstrated the ability to exercise consistently? Am I taking these medications, okay, because of a combination of all of those things? This is where being real with yourself, this is where educating yourself, okay, this is where making a commitment to yourself to get out of your comfort zone is what's going to make the difference. Ultimately, fundamentally understanding that the key to all weight loss, healthy fat metabolism, healthy weight loss, is by reducing the presence of insulin while maintaining healthy glucose levels. If you reduce the presence of insulin but your glucose level is 300, that is not healthy weight loss. That is, you're going to end up in the hospital with diabetic ketoacidosis. Okay? You're going to end up with your toes amputated because of chronic high blood sugar. So don't lie to yourself. Don't make that, fundamental mistake. Lowering the presence of insulin must be accompanied with lowering blood sugar levels. So the way that you do that is by focusing on foods that are high in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, but low in calories, low in carbohydrate, and then really consistently exercising. All right. We had one question come through. I want to do a huge shout out. We've got people all over the world joining us and listening right now. I want to do a huge shout out to everybody on Instagram. I see you guys. I also want to do a shout out to everyone on YouTube, and especially in the GlucoseZone app. You guys are inspiring us every single day. We see the progress that you're making. And it's amazing when we hear from you guys that you have lost 80, 100 pounds. When you have taken the fight to diabetes, it's so inspiring to us here. And we want to share that success. We want to share your story with the world because you deserve the recognition. But guys, we need to see it happening in the GlucoseZone app so we can see the actual information, the actual correlated data that actually tells the story of your success with diabetes. Having said that, though, we did have a great question come in about losing belly fat. So belly fat is the hardest fat to lose, okay? And it's very, very stubborn, and it requires two things. It requires a commitment to a lifestyle of fitness. That is the bottom line. There is no magic bullet. There is no 7-minute ab exercise routine that's going to make all of a sudden your belly fat go away. Okay? But So this does require a commitment. It requires a commitment to exercise. That's number one. But then once you've committed to exercise, okay, now if you've made that commitment to the exercise, now you have to follow it up with the food. And the food is all about food that is high in vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, low in calories, low in carbohydrate. All right? So I'm going to give you a really, really good example, practical example of exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm very, very lucky. I have a wife who is an excellent, excellent cook. She's very, very fit, and she knows what food actually enables healthy weight loss and then maintaining your figure. So tonight, we're going to have grilled chicken with olive oil and garlic. It's going to be delicious. Now, you got to be careful with the olive oil because a tablespoon of olive oil is 120 calories. Okay? So just keep that in mind. But olive oil is definitely a healthy, great source of healthy fats. So this is what we're having tonight. Grilled chicken with olive oil and garlic, and then a big, giant bowl of fresh steamed broccoli with a reasonable portion of sweet potato. And reasonable portion of sweet potato is basically a half a sweet potato. And that's a great, great, great example of a food, of a meal that is loaded with vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, has a low carbohydrate content. Even though sweet potato does have carbohydrate, it is a starchy vegetable, okay? But starchy vegetables are not the enemy. You just, portion size needs to be correct, okay? And then grilled chicken. Grilled chicken is a lean meat. It's a poultry-based meat that is a fantastic source of protein. So that's a good example of healthy eating that's focused on vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, that's going to stimulate healthy fat metabolism and get you on your way to losing weight with diabetes. And on that note, guys, we are going to call it a night. I want to thank everybody for joining us around the world. I can't wait, guys, to hear of your success. And I really, really can't wait to share your story with the world. Have a great night.